All right, welcome to another edition of the Scarif Scuttlebutt podcast. We are live here on YouTube, YouTube, and we're going to have a good show. This is the Scarif Scuttlebutt podcast, as I mentioned, part of the Red 5 podcast network, the only network that features an X-Wing pilot helmet. Thank you very much. How is everybody doing? Let's go and get this banner out of the way because we want to see some beautiful faces. Mainly mine. Hey, everybody. How are you guys doing? Woo-hoo. Thank you guys for joining us. Brad, how's it going?
Did you say the only network to feature an X-Wing helmet? I don't think you can back that up. And it's just Luke's, so probably nobody else uses that at all.
No, but, not at all.
I'm good, man. I got my calf from Dex's Diner.
Good.
Calf, specially brewed. So I'm ready to go. I'm ready to talk some Maul.
Excellent. We got some folks in the chat. Marisha, Andrew, how you guys doing this evening?
We're good.
We're doing good.
That's great.
Some ribs for dinner, and now we're ready to talk about some Maul.
Let's see. What did I have for dinner? I know I post stuff from time to time, and my wife and I don't cook. I think I remember boiling 2 hot dogs.
Was it Lunchables?
Lunchables. That was yesterday, but today was, we spiced it up a little bit. Pita and turkey dogs. Yeah.
Oh.
This quarantine has gone on too long. Yesterday we watched on YouTube this dude try every single type of Lunchable that's out there, and it was disgusting and horrible and awesome at the same time.
Nice. Well, I do like my Lunchable from time to time. It's a staple of the Gazga household here, but I digress.
So you think?
Hey, Marisha, I love that T-shirt you're wearing. Why don't you tell the folks a little bit about that? I heart midichlorians. That's beautiful.
Yes. I was heard to say on the air with Ro one day that I didn't hate midichlorians. The next thing I knew, I had this coming in the mail.
Awesome. Yeah. Who said? I think Rob said that you got to be careful with what you say around me because I can always profit from it.
Next thing you know, it'll be a T-shirt. Does anyone except me actually have one? Does anyone have one?
No, just that one so far.
Yeah. I think that's most of our merchandise too. Andrew wears most of the merchandise that we've sold.
Excellent. Yeah. So good stuff. So we're going to talk today. Let's see, who do we have in the chat? We've got Pizza and Parsecs. Which one? Do we have the pizza or the Parsec? It's Dave.
It's Dave.
How's it going, Dave? Mr. Rez. Let's see. Oh, Cam Ray is late.
I know. Where's Cam?
He's not. No.
Usually
Cam.
he's like 5 hours early.
Yeah. Well, maybe we already had this discussion and we're living in the future and he's already gone and said his piece. But yeah. So nice evening. It's a little rainy here in Chicago. It's going to be rainy all over the place, I guess, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. So we took some time tonight to kind of check some notes here, and we're gonna have a good show. It's when people saw the ending of Solo, a Star Wars story, they were a bit confused because Mr. Darth Maul was alive and well, and folks were a little confused. I was excited when my son and I saw that. I was like, oh, that took some guts to bring him back in. Especially in live action. But we are going to talk about Darth Maul. We saw him in the Phantom Menace, Episode 1, our Sith antagonist, one of. But what kind of character is he? What does he mean overall to the franchise? And what has he been doing lately? And all the hubbub surrounding the final few episodes of the Clone Wars on Disney Plus. Mm-hmm. It has been really, really excited. I think, Brad, did you see them again today? Were you kind of catching up again?
Yeah, it was good. So in preparation, I love preparing for these shows.
Mhm.
This is not work. What we do here. This is all fun. Well, some of it's work, but yeah. Rewatched the Twilight of the Apprentice. Those two shows there, parts 1 and 2,
Yeah.
and forgot. I don't know how I could forget how good those episodes were.
Yeah.
But I sort of forgot how good those were because that was actually the first time that Ahsoka had seen Maul and vice versa since the end of the Clone Wars,
Mhm.
where they parted ways. And
Mhm.
then I watched some YouTube videos on Maul, and then was reminded of the Son of Dothamir comic book series
Mhm.
that came out, and so I reread that in preparation. And there's some good stuff in there too. So I look forward to talking about that as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been watching all the Maul the past few days. I watched all the Clone Wars episodes related to Maul, and then I watched all the Rebels episodes today. And I read part of the comic, but I didn't quite get through it before it was time to eat and record and all that good jazz. So
And it's
yeah.
one of those that gets better with each one. I think it starts off a little rough, but then the later
Okay.
issues are better.
Yeah.
It's funny because with the with that comic book run, and I guess I'm guilty of this with a lot of the comics. I end up buying like the first few, and then I forget about it, and then no resolution. I don't know what happens afterwards.
I
Never
can't
go
do
back
that.
to the comic book store.
Yep.
Um, I'm afraid to ask my local comic book store to pull them for me because that's a commitment. That's you got to take your wallet out every week or so, and I don't think my wife
No,
would be into that.
mine's good that way because with my schedule, sometimes it's a couple months before I can go back there, and I'll send him a message. Hey, did you pull those Star Wars comics? And he'll like get mad at me. Of course, I pulled those comics, and I'll go in there and it'll be like Christmas because I have a huge stack of comics for me, and it's glorious. So yeah, shout
Yeah.
out to the local comic book stores for sure.
Yeah,
Awesome.
definitely. And yeah, so Darth Maul, let's talk a little Sith Lord here. Were you guys upset? Let's cut to the chase. But were you guys upset when he kind of just disappeared? A lot of people were talking about how Darth Maul was a really great villain. Obviously, that last battle in Episode One was amazing to look at, and Obi-Wan Kenobi just dispensed with him like that. It was great that George and Dave Filoni kind of had this thing where they brought him back,
Mhm.
and boy, what a journey, eh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was only 13 whenever episode 1 came out.
Oh,
So
shut up.
I mean, my expectations were, I mean, whatever a 13-year-old girl's expectations are for a movie. Um, he was definitely, I was surprised they killed him off so quick because he was such a big part of the marketing.
Yeah.
It was just like, well, for real, like, and I'd never felt like Dooku was as good of a villain as Darth Maul. He just wasn't as interesting, at least initially. So yeah, although I like later, I remember like reading, seeing like on the internet, Darth Maul is back. I was like, that's stupid. Keep scrolling, and then actually went a few years later, and actually watched it. It was like, oh, not stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty cool. Yeah. So it definitely, it was a better idea than it sounded like it was going to be.
Yeah, you had a character there in the Phantom Menace who really could have been one of your big bads all the way through the prequel trilogy. And I think probably should have been. I think that would have been more interesting to have had a constant villain rather than kind of getting a rotating cast with each movie with
Grievous,
with someone behind the scenes pulling the strings. But at the same time, they ended up building a pretty cool backstory for what Filoni was able to do with him later.
Yeah, definitely. Brad, what did you think of Darth Maul in first appearance?
Well, back then I made the mistake. They used to release some material before the movie came out, so they actually released the graphic novel for the Phantom Menace before the movie came out. They switched that up now, obviously. And I couldn't wait for that. It'd been how many years since we had a movie? I couldn't wait, so I tore into that graphic novel. So I kind of knew what was coming. It was still amazing to see it on screen, though. I think everybody can still remember when the second Blade came out, and just the whole place just goes crazy when that happened. And one of the videos I shared on Twitter tonight was a Duel of the Fates, uncut, just that fight. And I've said it many times before. I think that's the best sequence of all the movies. People love to crap on the Phantom Menace, but it's got some of the best music and it's got some of the best lightsaber fighting in all the movies.
So good.
Yeah,
I think
my only
still.
definitely. My only complaint was when Obi-Wan did cut him in half. I just wish they had sped that up to make it a little more realistic, because Maul had so much time to prepare for that shot. I don't know what he was thinking or where his mind was. I wish they just sped it up a little bit, with his force jump, just to make it a little quicker, a little more fluid motion. But that's a very small complaint for that whole thing. But to him coming back, and I know we'll get into it more, that wasn't a great reception when they brought him back.
No.
Some people dug it, but everybody's like, "What are you guys doing?" And
right.
Which was understandable. I mean, he was cut in half, but
right.
As people are changing their tunes now, I think for sure.
Yeah,
definitely. Getting back to the battle between Maul and Qui-Gon and Maul and Obi-Wan, Dave Filoni was talking about that particular fight between him and Qui-Gon, and it was pretty insightful. I mean, when did that movie come out? 91 or 99?
99.
99. Yeah, I mean, those characters are great characters. I for one am glad that they brought Maul back. I was interested to see how they would bring that back. But yeah, I mean, now we've got that full story, and we know how that arc has completed itself through Clone Wars and Rebels. But what did you guys think about the entire arc overall? Andrew?
Talking about Mauls Arc overall.
Yeah.
I mean, I really feel like they took a character who initially was thrown away too soon and built him into one of the most interesting villains in Star Wars. I mean, he's the antithesis of the Chosen One story arc.
Oh yeah.
It's like, he talks about, I was destined for greatness. I was once, the apprentice of the most powerful being in the galaxy. And it just it's always just snatched away from him. You have the Chosen One, we have the Chosen One in Anakin, but we have, as far as that as a character archetype, we have a few people that kind of fall in that archetype. And he's the antithesis of that. It just
he's the rejected one.
Right. It's where everything for the Chosen One, everything falls in their lap almost. And it's for him, it's always it's just outside of his grasp.
I almost feel like Darth Maul was an even more tragic character than Darth Vader or Anakin, because, like you said, I mean, he was rejected, he was thrown away, and when he went back to, what was the planet, Brad? Dathomir?
No, he went to Malachor.
When he went back to
well, it depends on which time you mean.
Yeah, no. When he went back to meet his brother, and then took him on. Took him on as an apprentice, Savage Opress, and they started doing their thing. I mean, was that the time where he dropped the Darth title?
So he actually drops, and this was thankfully I did the rewatch. He announces that on the Twilight of the Apprentice, those 2 episodes. He says, I used to have a name, but it's just Maul now. Or Ahsoka calls him Darth Maul, but he's like, no, it's not Darth anymore. It's just Maul. But to Andrew's point, his not only does he have a compelling story now and backstory, but his importance can't be minimized, because he's one of the few people that actually understands what Sidious is doing and what's coming. And while all the Jedi are completely blinded, and we've joked about them before, how they talk about Palpatine and Sidious in the same sentence and can't put 2 and 2 together. Meanwhile, Maul knows exactly what's going on, and he even knows the solution to it. He even, Marisha watched the Twin Sons episode. He knows about Obi-Wan and he knows about Luke. So, his importance cannot be minimized, which is you wouldn't think that if we talked about him a few years ago.
Oh yeah, definitely. We'll circle back around to his importance at the tail end of the story here. But what do you guys think of his brother Savage? I mean, he seemed if Darth Maul was a marauder Sith. What do you guys think of Savage Opress? I mean, he was just a savage.
He was the names sometimes.
Yeah.
Just like
That savage was Savage.
I mean, but yeah, I mean, he's like a sledgehammer. He just has like zero finesse. I was watching, because I was going and watching all the episodes, over the past couple of days, and it's like, man, this guy is he's just like an animal. He's really overpowered, and I mean, he just has, like I said, he has no perspective. He's just like, you just drop him and just let him go and just let him destroy things, because he's incapable of like planning and calculating and all the things that Darth Maul's always kind of attempting to do. But he definitely is. He's definitely a good balance, I think. I think they're good together in a bad kind of way.
Yeah,
and you said it though. He's a sledgehammer, definitely a sledgehammer, even more so than Maul. I think Maul, after he got his legs back, I think he almost started to soften up a little bit. I think he stepped back to kind of like look at the bigger picture, where Savage was just like, let me destroy and get revenge. Darth Maul, I think it's almost like he learned a lesson there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, let's not forget that you want to talk about tragic characters. Savage, when they found him, this guy was like a $120 soaking wet. He was not one of the bigger Night Brothers there on Dathomir, and which brings up the other cool characters that came out of all this, and that's Mother Talzin and the Night Sisters, and those are still awesome characters. If you played Jedi Fallen Order and you get to go to Dathomir, and one of your allies is one of the Night Sisters, I mean they have a lasting legacy as well. But Savage was a reluctant partner, and they used their Night Sister magic to actually make him like that. And you can see that when he finally dies by Palpatine, he goes back to where he was, and the way he was originally. So he's a tragic character too.
How badass was that scene when Palpatine figured out he was still alive and just kind of went over to where was he? He was Mandalore. Oh yeah. Man, that was. He just
throws Mandalorians out of the way and just walks right past them.
Yeah.
While they're choking. Yeah, while they're getting choked out.
Yeah. That was dope, as the young kids are saying.
Still, are the young kids still saying that?
I get a dope every so often from Alex over at the Salty Nerd podcast. So I think they're still saying dope.
Okay.
He's an old soul with the young.
Is he your liaison to the youngins?
Yeah. Yeah, he told me to start a TikTok for the Scarif Scuttlebutt, and I did for a while, but then I stopped for the obvious reasons, because I didn't want to see that.
Liv says dope. All right, if Liv says dope, we can still use it.
Okay.
Excellent. Awesome. So what else? Savage Opress, great character. And what's up with the Dark Mothers? The Mother Talzin. She's quite a character, eh?
Yeah.
What do you guys know about her?
Well, what's cool about her is, if anybody hasn't read the Son of Dathomir, it's not the greatest storyline, but does give you some more information about Mother Talzin and the Night Sisters and her relationship with Maul and how Maul came to be Sidious's apprentice. She is powerful enough to be on Sidious's radar as a threat to his power structure, and not many in the entire galaxy make that radar. He doesn't worry about even most of the Jedi's. He didn't, or Jedi. I don't know the plural of Jedi, just Jedi. He didn't worry about most of the Jedi, but he is, he was worried enough about her that he dispatched both Dooku and Grievous to go hunt her down on a couple of occasions, and she held her own pretty well. And that one, if you guys remember that, Marisha, I don't know if you watched this particular one, but when they went to fight well, there's a couple times where they went to Dathomir, but and then they brought all the Night Sisters back from the dead.
My
Those
kids
were
were like, ew, it's creepy.
those were some freaky
Those
episodes.
were some really freaky episodes. Yeah.
Yeah.
They were
They're all in
deep.
the
They were
pods.
dark.
Yeah. They're in their little death pods or whatever that they put them in on Dathomir. She's powerful. And her and Sidious go way back. So that's saying something for her. And like I said, she held her own for a while until the very end, and even managed to bring herself back through Maul. So pretty cool character.
Yeah, getting back to, we mentioned his appearance towards the end of Solo, A Star Wars Story, and I know, throughout his story arc in Clone Wars and Rebels, we see a little bit about, his takeover of Mandalore and his rise to power. But one of the things that I really, really enjoyed about Solo was the darkness of the affiliations between the Empire and the criminal underground. I find that very fascinating, and I really do hope that we get to see the rest of that story, especially now that we have seen Maul, controlling that. I really want to see what happens next. What were your first reactions to seeing Maul at the end of Solo? Were you guys okay with that? Tell me about it.
Oh, I loved it. I would. That was one of my favorite moments of the movie, and I don't think it was there. I think it was there to. I think the intention was to lead into something based in the Star Wars underworld, whether it be a movie or a series. And I don't know if that was.
Oh, we lost him.
I mean, hopefully we got some. The Citadel Tower went down there for a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Like, of course, folks like you and I just eat that stuff up. Seeing him, I don't know if it's fair to the general public. I don't, obviously they're going to cater to the hardcore fans, but the general public thought he had been dead for many years now. So I'm not sure if that's fair to them, but I don't care.
Yeah, that's we've talked about this in other shows and other broadcasts too. I think as long as the story is served, from the perspective of the overall, I guess the overall narrative, I don't think it's fair to I guess I can turn it around on you. I don't think it's fair to the hardcore fans to just kind of cater to the lowest common denominator, and by that I mean obviously the casual fans. But we got Andrew and Marisha back. Guys, you guys got hit by rebel spies? What was going on?
Dathomir witches or something. I don't know.
Something got us.
Thank you for coming back. And we're just talking about how you guys felt about Darth Maul at the end of Solo. We want to see that story continue, and we want to hear your thoughts continue. So take it away.
All right, I don't know really where I cut out, but I loved that moment, and I really think that the intention was to lead into either a series or a movie based in the Star Wars underworld. And there was rumors, there was talk about the Josh Trank film that kind of fell through with the Boba Fett stuff, with that actually being a criminal underworld movie. And so I don't really know if that's something they plan on revisiting, but I certainly think they should. I want to see more elements of that. You go back to Shadows of the Empire and some of that stuff. That stuff was amazing. And now you have the opportunity to work Maul into all of that if you come back and do it. And I certainly think that's worth visiting.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah, what got me was their attention to detail when they made that. He's only in there for maybe 2 minutes total, but he had the metal legs and he had Savage's lightsaber.
Right.
With the curve.
Yeah, because he had, Savage was the last one to have a double bladed lightsaber, and that was the one that he had that he force grabbed, and then seeing the red in Kira's eyes. I mean, people say make Solo 2 happen, and I'm fine with that, but I I know Solo's story. And if they're going to call it Solo 2, that's fine. I mean, obviously, Han was going to get that job with Jabba that they alluded to at the end. But that ties in perfectly to the criminal underworld, the fight between the Hutts and the Pikes and Crimson Dawn and all that. So yeah, they can call it whatever they want to, but I'm with Andrew. I'd love to see that.
And I think that's one way that you can bring Star Wars, forward. And obviously, Alex has said it on our podcast. He's used to Star Wars being, the good guys and the bad guys, and that's it. You got the good guys and the bad guys. So when Rogue One came out and you saw a little gray area there, especially with the rebels, I found that very refreshing. I found it interesting because it kind of harkened to real life. But I thought it was a very brave way, a brave direction for them to kind of introduce that aspect, especially with Cassian Andor. Right off the bat, the first couple of minutes, he shoots his informant just to, he doesn't want to get caught. This guy's going to slow him down. And that's like real world war. That's the war in Star Wars. So I find that stuff very fascinating.
Yeah.
I mean, the good versus bad, it's been told and it deserves to be told, but there's so much more there. The people that are on the front lines and the people that are working behind the scenes and stuff like that, and all the tangents. I love the intricacies of the Empire melding with the criminal underworld. Palpatine had the Senate and he had the Moffs, the regional governors, but he also used those crime syndicates, and that's what he used Maul for. He let Maul consolidate power, but then I think Maul knew. I mean, by the end of that episode in the Clone Wars, he knew that Palpatine was still more powerful than he was.
Yeah. If anyone doubted.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I know the answer because we're kind of all in agreement. But do you guys feel that George and Dave Filoni made the right decision about bringing Maul back?
Oh yeah,
absolutely. I mean, he is. I would say through Rebels, he's probably the most interesting villain until you actually get up to having the Emperor show up towards the end.
Thrawn was.
I mean, Thrawn's good, but I would still say that Maul is a way more interesting villain than what they did with Thrawn.
Thrawn's a little more predictable. That's the thing about most of the villains are you kind of know what to expect from them. Maul, I feel like we were watching Pirates of the Caribbean the other day, and somebody says, "Whose side is Jack on?" So I feel like that's kind of the deal with Maul. It's like, whose side is he on? Nobody knows.
Well, by Rebels, he's not really. I mean, he's out to destroy the Sith and the Jedi if he can do both.
Yeah.
But his allegiances have certainly shifted, and his goals. And he had his one big thing was to kill Kenobi, and for so long he thought he had that thing snatched away from him,
right?
And that tormented him for a long time.
That's what makes him, for me, that's what makes him a really intriguing character, because like I mentioned earlier, I mean, it seems like he did learn some sort of lesson, and he changed his tune. He kind of took the information, that he learned about stuff and just kind of, fine tuned it and went with it. So, great decision by George and Dave. It's a fantastic character.
Yeah. I mean, like you said on, I think it was last week, when he giggles, when he realizes Palpatine's plan and what he's up to, when Maul started, he was at the same level as Savage was. He was not meant to have a brain. He was bred just to kill. And that's what Sidious needed at that time. But he learned and adapted. He's on Team Maul, and that's it. So whoever he has to align with, even if that's Ahsoka, then he'll do that just to make sure that he succeeds. But if he hadn't come back, we wouldn't have had all these stories to talk about at the end of Clone Wars and even in Rebels. And you can't have this discussion without talking about the the brilliant work of Sam Witwer throughout the Clone Wars. You know, he made that character. You know, those when they brought him back, and you know, he was living as a basically half arachnid in a junk pile, and just crazy living in that isolation. And Sam just sold it like no other. Like, this dude is nuts. And he just continued that all the way through Rebels. So you know, there's no Maul without talking about Sam, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I was actually watching an interview with him. He was talking about whenever he first was talking to George Lucas, and he was like, well, you know, what would you think about bringing Darth Maul back? And he was like, that's ridiculous. Which is really ironic, seeing as how that's, you know, he made that role so iconic.
Him and Ray Parks, great ambassadors, great fan ambassadors. If you guys follow him on Instagram, he's always, you know, doing some, I don't know, workouts, exercises, saber play. So, you know, for a while there, he was doing a lot of that stuff, and people were wondering, why is he training? Is he coming back for something? We were really excited. And, you know, definitely. And then they announced the return of Clone Wars, and people started to speculate. So it's really, really great. You know, as far as seeing characters like Darth Maul come back after a while, do you guys feel that it's a little fan servicey, or do you guys feel that the introduction of these characters really served a purpose? I'll start with you, Marisha, because I love that face.
I'm a fan. I like to be served.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about that. We talk about that all the time. And
I don't see the problem with fan service. Like, I mean, that's the thing. Without fans being happy, you have no franchise.
As long as it's not at the expense of story, then
if you can
by all means.
If you can tell a good story and also get people excited and get people talking, why not?
Definitely. Brad, fan service, fan or foe?
Oh, I've made my thoughts on this very clear in the past. Like I said, don't create characters unless you're going to use them. They created all these you know, the what do they call it? The journey. Isn't that what they call the series? Like the journey to Rise of Skywalker and the journey to The Last Jedi. If you're going to have these journeys, well, damn it all, use those characters in the movies. You know, Viberati was a good character in Phasma and Black Spire. And what I would have loved to have seen 10 seconds of her, you know, in the Rise of Skywalker, just, you know, at their base. You create all these great characters. Yeah, use them. I don't, you know, if they have a major part, minor part. Somebody brought up, you know, in our Red 5 roundup, should Ora Marco get us a sideshow? I'm not sure about a whole show for Ora Marco, but you know, would I love to see him again? Yeah, like Shriv, you know, the Duros from the Inferno Squad from Battlefront. You know, when he worked with Lando, if you played that story mode, those are awesome. The chemistry between Shriv and Lando, it's hilarious. And that's 100% fan service. So yeah, I'm completely down for fan service. As long as it makes sense. I mean, it's got to make some kind of, like, don't throw it in there just to throw it in there. Sure. Maybe I'm a hypocrite right now. I don't know.
Or
it's got to make a little bit of sense.
It's the caffeine.
It's the caffeine, yeah.
But so it's calf in our world. Sorry.
Stay in universe.
More Maul, more Kira, more Solo. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yep.
Excellent. What about let's talk a little bit. Let's get right into Darth Maul's story arc. And how it ended up. I know, you know, a lot of people talk about how it's kind of an antithesis, bringing him back, especially since we, you know, from Rebels, since that Twin Sons episode, we know how it's going to end up. But, you know, Brad and I, we always talk about how Star Wars at this point it's not about the final destination. It's about the journey and how we get there, which is exciting, especially now looking at the Siege of Mandalore and looking at the last story arc in the Clone Wars, how do you guys feel about how Disney is telling the story at this point?
The Maul story?
The Maul story and how they're peppering things in every so often. I mean, we've got Rebels that we saw a little bit about. Obviously we saw Maul's rise to power. Clone Wars, he's back. Hopefully we get more of Solo. I mean, they're taking this story and just kind of filling in the gaps. I think in appropriate ways, and I kind of love that. Again, we know where it ends up. But similar to Rogue One, we know that they got the plans, but how did they get there? How do these characters get from that point to where we know they end up? And to me, that's the fascinating part. Do you guys agree? Or
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean they've chosen very, very interesting moments throughout just to have him pop up. Whether it be as sort of a rival to Obi-Wan, or to kind of be a thorn in Obi-Wan's side, or then later in Rebels to tempt Ezra.
Because he's always on a quest for a new apprentice. After he loses Savage, he wants a new apprentice. He tries to convince Ahsoka to come, join him, and he wants maybe he just wants to be loved, poor thing.
But it's I've always looked at it as, he was when we first see him in the Phantom Menace, I mean, he's a little bit more of that sledgehammer. I mean, he attacks first and talks later. And by the time we see him, and we see some of that in the Clone Wars, but what he hates by the time we get to the Rebels is Sidious. I mean, that's Invader, and that took his place. But you see him become more and more like Sidious with the sweet talking, the people that he's trying to manipulate. I
mean, that's another lesson that I feel that he's learned. I mean, he's picking up from that. So yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, he learned the manipulation at the feet of the master. So
sure.
He kind of starts playing puppet master at some point. Kind of in the same way that Sidious does, which makes him such a great person to drop just in random places because he's pulling strings everywhere. He's all over the galaxy pulling all kinds of different strings. So there are a lot of places that really make sense for him to show up, which I think is one of the reasons why whenever he does, it's not like, well, that doesn't make sense, because it does. Because those are the kinds of places that he's involved in. He's on Mandalore. He's in the criminal underworld. So it works.
Yeah, Charles is talking about their approach to universe building, world building, and definitely one aspect of that. Yeah, Brad.
One of the things I was going to bring up is he chose to drop the Darth title. Obviously, he was abandoned by Sidious. I mean, I think Sidious did think he was dead for a while, actually. But do you guys ever think he actually stopped being Sith? You guys talked about it. He would have loved to have had Ahsoka as an apprentice. He would have loved to have Ezra he literally called Ezra his apprentice. Even though he dropped the Darth title, do you guys think he ever actually stopped being Sith? Can you resign from Sithdom like Ahsoka walked away from the Jedi?
That's a good point. Yeah, I never thought of that, because you're right. I mean,
I don't know. That's kind of an interesting question, because it's, with Sith basically being a religion just like Jedi. I mean, can you be evil and walk away from practicing evil in a specific manner? But I don't know. I mean, I think his quest overall is to find an apprentice and overthrow Sidious.
I mean, okay, so Ahsoka's all like, I'm not there's this big I'm no Jedi statement she makes, but she's clearly the quintessential Jedi. She's all of the ideal Jedi things. She embodies the ideal attributes of a Jedi, even if she doesn't any longer associate with the orthodoxy.
Yeah.
I feel like Maul is kind of the quintessential Sith, even though he doesn't subscribe to the Sith orthodoxy anymore. He's not a master or an apprentice, so although he sets himself up with his brother to be the master with the apprentice. But I think that he's really, in a lot of ways, Ahsoka's counterpart in the darkness.
Yeah, well, you were talking the other day. When we first kind of started diving back in this, because we've talked about Ahsoka as possibly being the daughter, or at least some connection to the daughter, and we've always kind of talked about. Lately, we've talked about Ben Solo as the son, but then when he kind of turns back, it kind of throws a wrench in that. But the day we were watching it, and Marisha looked at me and goes, "Could Maul be the son? Like, does that work?" And I think it does, because he is the opposite of what Ahsoka is. And as far as that Sith title, he really throws that Sith title away when it becomes convenient to not be a Sith. When he's trying to convince Ezra, and Ezra says, "Oh, so you're not a Jedi, so you're a Sith." And he says, "No, I used to be," but so I think it's all part of the game he's playing.
Yeah, that's a good point. Charles has that in the chat here. Dark side of the Force and Ahsoka is the light. So yeah, great pickup.
Yeah, and I think the only thing that Ahsoka dropped was, as Palpatine called it, the narrow dogmatic views of the Jedi.
Exactly.
She dropped the dogma, but she still embodied the ideals. And not only did Maul not drop the dogma, he lived the ideals of the Sith. So I think, Andrew, you bring up a good point. It was maybe just a matter of convenience that he dropped that. And if he didn't drop that, I think he knows what would happen with Sidious if he didn't just say he wasn't a Sith anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Well, I believe in that episode when Sidious kills Savage, doesn't Sidious kind of challenge him on still using the title of Sith?
Well, yeah. I mean, because he's trying to get his own apprentice, and we've talked about the rule of two, and that's just not a thing. So then
How
that's
dare you set yourself up as a rival?
Yeah.
Yep. So.
Yeah. All good points. I want to ask you guys a quick question, because I want to see if I can understand it a little better. Towards the end of Twin Sons, when Maul is in Obi-Wan's arms about to die, spoilers if anybody's not seen it yet, he asks about the Chosen One, and Obi-Wan tells him he is, referring to Luke, he's watching on Tatooine. And I think Maul's last words were good. He will avenge me, or something like that.
He'll avenge us.
Yeah,
He'll avenge us. Can you guys extrapolate what was your interpretation of that line? Because it can go so many ways. How did you guys interpret that? He will avenge us. Us who? The Sith? Us who? Me and you, Ben? Who's he talking about?
I mean, I think he's specifically talking about all of the people that have been done wrong by Sidious. Sidious has twisted. I mean, you go back to the origins of Maul and see the dark things that were done to him to twist him into the character we see in the Phantom Menace. Taking him to Malachor and having him, breathe in the ashes of the fallen Sith Lords, so that he feels the lightsaber strikes of the Jedi killing former Sith, and to build that rage against the Jedi. And then I really think, for me, I think he's talking about specifically about all of the people that that Sidious has ruined. Obi-Wan's in the desert. He calls him, look at you, a rat hiding in the desert. And it's this, he took him from what he was, and now Obi-Wan's in the desert because of Sidious.
Yeah. Brad?
Yeah, I mean, I think Andrew pretty much nailed it. My first thought was the discarded ones. That would be probably a narrow view. He was discarded by his master, and Obi-Wan lost Qui-Gon, which is ironic since Maul killed Qui-Gon. But from a broader perspective, I think Andrew's exactly right. I think it's everybody that's been ever screwed over by Sidious and the Sith in general. Um, so yeah, and it was powerful the fact that he used the word us instead of
Right.
me or anything like that. And not just that, but these visions, we see that these visions started in the Clone Wars. So he's been haunted by these visions for like what 15, 20 years
Right.
almost. And they've been tormenting him, and he's been doing everything in his power to, not let them happen. And that's actually what drew him to Tatooine, to Obi-Wan. And if I remember correctly, he thought Obi-Wan was the one at first. Oh no, I'm sorry, Ezra thought it was Obi-Wan, but I think Maul knows that it's Luke that's going to be the one that avenge them. So yeah, it's pretty powerful that he's been tortured by these visions for that many years,
Right.
and he finally had peace there at the end.
Yeah. And with that, I guess as far as taking that and going back to is he still a Sith? His dying thoughts were of vengeance.
Yeah.
Which, Obi-Wan doesn't respond to that when he just, it kind of cuts away. But, vengeance would not be a Jedi trait.
Right.
So
So maybe he was a Sith all along, just manipulating people on the way to his ultimate goal, but his last words kind of reveal his true nature.
yeah.
I mean, we talk about fallen Jedi. I don't know what a fallen Sith is, but I guess
Yeah.
he's a fallen Sith.
It's so interesting because Dave Filoni and the writers, the creative team that came up with this storyline, especially the end of Maul and how he was really close to finding the secret, and he died in Obi-Wan's arms, talking about the chosen one. It's just a shame that it doesn't seem to that narrative doesn't seem to carry over to the sequel trilogy. It's almost like they just forgot about what they were trying to say, especially about the chosen one. And I know a lot of people will give me shit about talking again about the chosen one, but it's there for a reason. It's there for a purpose, and I just feel that they decided consciously to forego that, and that kind of ticks me off.
I think the thing with the chosen one is it's kind of course it's a prophecy, right? So it's ambiguous. But if you look at it as there is a chosen one, then it's got to be Anakin. But if you look at it as if but if there are multiple chosen ones, then does anybody ever ultimately bring balance? It becomes a lot more complicated and a lot more convoluted, I think, with kind of some of the decisions they made in the sequels. Because it's like, well, wait a second. We thought we had an answer to that question. We thought that we had a really clear cut, okay, he's the chosen one because ultimately he throws Palpatine off of there and he poofs and, the end. Ultimately at the end.
Sure.
So yeah, so now there's a question of like, okay, so what does that even mean? What does the chosen one even mean? And I think I've spent an unreasonable amount of time trying to decide. Okay, so what is that even supposed to mean now?
Yeah, and that's obviously my hang up. I mean, we've had, decades worth of that kind of storyline, that narrative, and the new films don't really address it. Or maybe they do, and I'm just too dumb to realize it. But I wish I wish for me it was a little more concrete. Not that I want to be spoon fed this information, but based on the stuff that Dave Filoni and they've been doing with a damn cartoon, it would have been nice to kind of throw that quality into something a little bit more concrete when it comes to the actual films.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, people mention the fact that what further confused the situation was Maul asking Obi-Wan, "Is he the chosen one?" And Obi-Wan says yes.
Right.
So that further confused the situation. But you have to remember, well, number one, I don't think they were thinking about this huge debate that we're having as to who the
Right.
chosen one is. But you have to remember, this was, that was Obi-Wan that said that, and you have to take it from his perspective. Do you think at this point Obi-Wan thinks Anakin is the chosen one? I mean, he made his opinion clear at the end of Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah, you just have to go back to his last words to Anakin.
Right. Right. And then, so obviously he's not going to say Anakin. There's no way he could know that at that point.
Right.
As far as, what you're saying for the sequel trilogy, the only, I don't know, compromise that might make sense is, Marisha's talking about prophecies, and, this is the danger of following prophecies. And, there's a lot of good stuff about that in the Master and Apprentice book, written by Claudia Gray. Maybe we'll get to talk to her more about that in the near future. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, that's the calf. Maybe it's a generational thing. Maybe each trilogy had its chosen one. And if you look at the timeline, you're really looking at 3 generations right in a row, or pretty close to right in a row. So perhaps the chosen one is a repetitive thing, and it's a title, not a person. So it's a title given to the person that restores balance to the Force.
Yeah, I guess the only thing is, like, hey, Rey is at no point ever referred to as the chosen one, right?
No,
I don't think so.
No. So, I mean, we do still have Anakin and Luke as the only characters ever referred to by another character in universe as the chosen one. So
She definitely
the
fits
fact
the
that
type.
well, her archetype is definitely a chosen one, but just because her archetype fits that doesn't mean that she's the chosen one.
Yeah. Like you say,
Yeah.
prophecies, they're tricksy things. You think they
Yeah,
mean
and-
one thing and then they don't.
Sure.
Something different. It's
Well,
complicated.
let me throw this out. There's been a couple of comments in the chat. Charles Westcott is just throwing it out there. Maybe Palpatine's the chosen. I was about to say, because I listened to conversations, and their wives were talking about the Palpatine. Let me tell you about the Palpatine. So maybe the Palpatine is the chosen one. And we've had some other points here in the chat. I wanted to ask you guys, because we know as individuals who watch the movies, because George Lucas in interviews has said Anakin's the chosen one. If you watch these movies, Anakin, it's Anakin. Is that information clouding our judgment? Are we not seeing the prophecy for what it is? Do you guys feel that perhaps maybe that is what's clouding our judgment? As Yoda said, the prophecy may have been misread. Are we misreading that?
Maybe. It's George Lucas's fault.
Well,
We
I
all
mean, the
do
thing is, you had the original trilogy and you never had this whole chosen one thing.
Right.
This was added in the prequels, and it convoluted things from the moment it was added in the prequels.
Absolutely.
You think so?
I think so, because, for starters, we're never actually told what the prophecy means. And then when you get to the end of it, for the 6 years that those movies were coming out, the prequels were coming out, it was every 2 years, right? Or was it every 3 years?
I think it may have been 3.
Every 3 years. So for all this time, we're going, are they going to explain to us how the prophecy works? And we got down to the end of it, and the prophecy was never explained. And so then it started this whole prophecy of, well, how did Anakin bring balance to the Force? And that's what led to George Lucas later talking about, well, he brought balance to the Force when he killed Sidious. It's like, okay, but now that's undone. So I don't know. I think because it was never concretely explained in the prequels what it meant in universe, that it has just always kind of been this thing that's been left open for interpretation. And maybe that was the point.
George really knows how to market these films decades later, huh?
Yeah.
Because we're still talking about it. But yeah, go ahead, Brad.
Yeah, if you're talking about the prequels, the only things they taught us is you can't trust a prophecy. Yeah. And two, if there was any chance that that Anakin was actually the chosen one, the Jedi screwed that all up. If there's a 5% chance that this guy actually is the chosen one of your own prophecy, maybe you should treat him a little bit differently. Now, did Anakin have his own issues? Of course he did. He was not the ideal Jedi. But the way they treated him from day one, if you have any stock in this guy whatsoever, you probably don't want to treat him the way that. Of course, I'm going to start bashing Mace again. You don't want to treat him the way that Mace did the entire time, who just bashed him relentlessly.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
and someone's going to have to explain this Palpatine thing to me. I've never heard that as a possibility for the chosen one. I'm not seeing the logic in that one.
We'll
I
have to
think
ask
we can
Charles.
kind of go back to I've been for our other show. I've been reading a bunch of stuff, some stuff from Foundation by Isaac Asimov, and you go back to these ideas of like once you know the future, once you can calculate it, what's supposed to happen, can you then once you start trying to alter it, things spiral, and then it means nothing anymore.
Oh, you change the events leading up to it, and then all of a sudden you've changed the events leading up to the prophecy.
Right, like what the end is supposed to be. Like the whole thing with that is that the idea that this empire is going to collapse for 10,000 years. So he sets these scientists to work to reduce it to can we get this down to 1,000 years by manipulating events? So once you start like making decisions based on a prophecy, do you alter the outcome?
Right.
I mean, I see what you're saying, but how still does that make Palpatine the chosen one?
Oh no, I don't. I don't think it does. I'm not going there on that.
I have no idea. I mean,
I'm 100% with you on what you're saying. I just don't.
No, as far as I have no idea how to address Palpatine being the chosen one.
I mean, that's kind of like, those conversations we had, I think it was last month where, was it the will of the Force? Was Order 66 the will of the Force? And I think you're almost getting into that area if you're going to call Palpatine the chosen one. I'm willing to entertain a lot of things.
And I guess, the fact that Rey is a Palpatine, I think that might lend to, that notion that, it wasn't Sheev Palpatine, but it was Rey Palpatine. And, who knows? Maybe that's the answer. But still doesn't satisfy my curiosity.
No.
So getting back to the let's talk about the significance of Darth Maul and what he has contributed to the world building, especially with the characters of not only himself but Ahsoka. And it almost seems too that Obi-Wan wants nothing more to do with him. He had his fight more than once and beat him every time. There's no real connection between Obi-Wan and Darth Maul until the end. We see that very, strangely tender moment at the end in that episode, Twin Sons. But other than that, we don't see Kenobi even wanting to deal with him. But Ahsoka, on the other hand, there are some very significant moves for both of them as characters. Brad, you want to talk a little bit about that?
I mean, I think he's a lesson in not to marginalize anybody or reduce the significance of anybody, because you never know what their importance and significance is going to be now or in the future. As you said, Obi-Wan kind of, he was a pain in the side, but besides that, that's all he was to him. Sidious discarded him for a number of years. But meanwhile, as we've said, he was learning and adapting this entire time. So don't discount somebody. He's, we talk about his arc. He's got more growth in his arc than most characters in the Star Wars universe. He went from having, 5 lines in the Phantom Menace to this major character. So and he grew the whole time. We talked earlier about how Disney is piecemealing stuff. There's one piece that I would really like to see, and that's how we got to Malachor.
Yes.
And I forgot that he had been there. He said he had been there for a number of years. Looking at the timeline, Solo, I think they said was like 5 to 10 years before that episode. So, and he said he had been there for a while now. And I thought he was lying at first, but no, judging by the way he's acting, I think he wasn't lying there. And I would love to see how he went from being on top of his game, pretty much leading all these crime syndicates, to being stuck on Malachor. And I think there's a major story. Like, you want to talk about Solo 2, there's a whole trilogy there. If they want to, you can have crime syndicates as episode 2, and then you can have Maul's trip to Malachor as episode 3. There's a whole story arc right there, and ended on Malachor. So he's one of those, just don't discount anybody, because you never know what they're going to turn into later on.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't see a whole lot of characters that have that much influence on so many different people. He's really
on both sides.
He's an important player for a lot of really significant characters.
That's what I love. That's what I love too about the Clone Wars is how we talked about, obviously, Ahsoka coming into the fray and people not liking her, and now she's like the top favorite character. I mean, these guys really know how to develop these characters.
Filoni has showed that he's a master of the long game in character development. Sometimes you feel like you might could have done that a little bit faster, but he is a master of the long game in storytelling.
Isn't it more satisfying though? Like, just you look at it from a lengthy perspective. I mean, we saw what happened at the very first Clone Wars movie with the introduction of these characters, and all the way to now. I mean, there's a vast library of narrative there that for me, I look at it and I'm in awe at the fact that they were able to do this. And I know, Marvel has done that with all their movies, but with Star Wars, it's unique because it's not just movies. It's the novels and the comic books and some of the other ancillary material that is out there. Some of it is hit or miss, obviously, but I think it's fascinating.
Yeah.
Brad is reading some notes.
Yeah, I am.
But getting back to Maul's influence on other characters, and this episode aptly titled "The Legacy of Maul." What do you guys feel his legacy is?
Death and destruction. He just leaves death and destruction in his wake. Sometimes people grow as a result of the death and destruction that he leaves. But ultimately, he really messes things up for Anakin and Obi-Wan right there at the get-go. Then he goes and he kills the woman that Obi-Wan loves, even if Obi-Wan's kind of been keeping his distance. Then he goes in and he kills all those clones at the end of Clone War. He leaves so much destruction in his wake. And so, Ahsoka manages to pull a phoenix and kind of come out of it stronger. But he destroys a lot of people along the way.
He does. But I think the thing you go back to with Maul is go back to the John Williams piece that plays when we see him and Qui-Gon, and go back to things that people like Dave Filoni have talked about with the Duel of the Fates, with Qui-Gon and Maul, fighting for the future of this kid. And he plays the role of fate in a lot of ways. He changes the story wherever he shows up. His actions dictate what happened to everybody around him.
Mm-hmm.
Despite the fact that he can never attain his
goal.
wants and his goals, Obi-Wan being his white whale. I mean, like you said, Obi-Wan really doesn't have anything for Maul, but Maul spends a great portion of his life where Obi-Wan is his white whale. I mean, he's spends it looking for, and he's heartbroken when he thinks he misses his chance. And then the first thing he does when he finds out Obi-Wan is alive is goes running towards him. But it's this whole thing where it's like fate of so many people in the story at larger in the saga is so tied to Maul.
Yeah, and that's the really cool thing, especially with this final few chapters of the Clone Wars, and how close he got to spilling the beans on Anakin, and again, Brad, I mean, the Jedi not I don't know, not doing anything about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to counter necessarily what Andrew is saying because I think he makes a lot of good points. And yeah, he did affect change. He did alter some things. I think one of the biggest themes of Star Wars, from my point of view, is this struggle between free will and predestiny.
Yeah.
And Andrew got into Duel of the Fates, and so yeah, he had perseverance, and he adapted, and he grew, and he learned. But at the same time, he's also a case study in the futility of trying to change fate. He had all these visions, and he took all these actions, but at the same time, he, in the long run, wasn't able to change those. Palpatine still ordered, executed Order 66, killed all the Jedi. The Republic fell, and he took on Vader. And as much as Maul would have liked to have changed those things, in the end he couldn't. So that goes into the fate side of things, where he, no matter what he did, he couldn't change it. So I think part of his legacy is not being able to change what's going to happen.
It's so ironic though, because he has so much influence on everyone else's fate, but he cannot. The things that he is trying to change, he can't touch. It's like all the things that he's trying to do, he's trying the fate that he's trying to prevent or cause or whatever, he can't do it. He's sort of almost a pawn. He's just almost a conduit more than anything else, because he doesn't have a whole lot of a knack of actually changing anyone's fate, but he's still the vehicle through which everybody's fate's affected.
Yeah, well, we all know that George was a huge fan of the self-fulfilling prophecy, having studied Joseph Campbell in Greek mythology, and Dave being his number one student. I think Dave took some of that on with these self-fulfilling prophecies. So all these things that he was trying to avoid and change, they ended up happening to him, and he couldn't do anything about it. So I think you're right on with that.
Yeah,
that's pretty good. Yeah. So Darth Maul is definitely a force to be reckoned with. We have enjoyed his rise to power and fall again, but it has been quite a journey there. As I'm falling out of focus here, but guys, any last thoughts on?
What are you drinking over there?
Any last thoughts on Darth Maul?
I just want to see. I want to see more of his story.
Yep, for sure. Like we always talk about how we want to see new and different and more, except we want to see more Maul.
I mean, anything that takes place between Revenge of the Sith and Episode 4, I'm down for. So Kira, they made a compelling character with Kira, and their involvement with the crime syndicates. They'd be stupid. I hate to accuse Disney of being stupid. They'd be stupid not to take advantage of that and expound on the stories there. It's wide open. As Rose said, we know how it ends, but we don't care about that. We care about 5 years before,
Right. We know how Titanic ended. Still, like, the movie made an ungodly amount of money.
Right.
Poster child for you don't have to be surprised about the ending to go see the movie.
Definitely, yeah. Like I said, it's all about the journey, not the destination, not the destination. And we'll definitely partake in that story if they give it to us.
Definitely.
As rural farm boy would say.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, guys, thank you very much, Andrew Marisha, for joining us tonight on the Scarif podcast.
Absolutely.
Tell the folks how they can find you and the plethora of other shows that you guys put on.
Okay. You can find our shows. Our 2 shows are Coruscant Radio Underground and the Science Fictionary podcast. You can pretty much find them anywhere you listen to podcasts. They're pretty much showing up on all the podcatchers now, including iTunes and Google Podcast. And you can find our Twitter at crew_podcast, CRU_podcast. And Marisha might have something as well.
Oh, you can find me. Okay, so the real plan for my internet presence was to be for cosplay, but mostly I just go on and retweet Star Wars stuff these days. So I'm on Twitter as P Padawans. My website is princessesandpadawans.com, and I am on Instagram. We'll be on Instagram again eventually if we ever take any more pictures, because we can leave our house at princesses_and_padawans.
Awesome. Very good stuff. And what do you guys have? What do you guys have coming up for CRU?
We've we had that big episode with E.K. Johnston a couple of weeks ago, and we've been kind of trying to figure out some things we want to work on from there. We've got a few people we're talking about trying to get on, and as soon as we can move forward with some of that, we'll let everybody know. But otherwise,
we do have a Clone Wars episode almost ready. It's recorded.
Oh, we do have an episode coming up this week with where we talked the last 4 episodes of Clone Wars. And
nice.
I tracked me down a youngin who actually watched Clone Wars when he was the target age.
Nice.
So yeah, we do have that coming out this week.
That's dope.
That's dope. Yeah. Thanks, Brad. And speaking of dope, Brad, what do you have coming up?
Me, nothing. The Scarif Scuttlebutt, we got a lot coming up. I'm with Marisha. I just retweet stuff all day. I don't really have a life. But yeah, we got a lot of stuff coming up on Scarif. We're still running the Scarif 2001 for anybody who's still watching us live here. Not too late to get involved with Scarif 2001. I'm going to fail at that, but at least I tried. If you want to check that out, look at the pinned tweet on my personal account, Jedi Mind Trick 79 on Twitter. If you want to find us on Twitter, if you want to find all of our links, just go to Scarif Podcast on Twitter. I'm sure everybody watching already knows that, but for those listening, at Scarif Podcast. Also doing Krennic Cares. Please look up that hashtag Krennic Cares. We're trying to build the community, and also we want to give to a selected charity. So please look that up and post a link to your favorite charity. Really hoping to make that happen pretty soon here. And yeah, we've made the announcements on Twitter and on our YouTube channels, but couldn't be more excited about the guests that we have coming up on the Scarif Scuttlebutt just about a week away. We have May 25th. We have Claudia Gray, and just so everybody knows, the other one that we booked is Kevin Scott, and we're excited about that. We'll be interviewing him in June, and we're at the same time we booked Kevin, we're like, man, we'd love to get Claudia too. So it just so happens we worked with a nice lady that works with both Kevin and Claudia, and we're like, oh, let's see if we can just get Claudia, because I haven't heard her on too many podcasts, and we went through all the hoops and stuff, and they were kind enough to book Claudia Gray, and I couldn't be happier about that. Ro wanted to do something on May 25th, and we were able to make that happen. So Definitely one of my
The real Star Wars Day for us
real Star
old
Wars Day.
timers.
Yep. So we're going to be talking about Lost Stars, Bloodline, Master and Apprentice, all the good ones from Claudia Gray. We just did that episode about Qui-Gon and what would have happened if he had trained Anakin instead of Obi-Wan. And we'll be able to pose that question to her, because if anybody's met Claudia Gray, they know that she is a huge Qui-Gon Jinn fan. I think it's her top, if not top character, at least top Jedi. She loves Qui-Gon, so I can't wait to ask her that question. And those are going to be a lot of fun. So couldn't be more excited.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm very excited. And, looking at our future calendar, once all this COVID-19 stuff goes away, hopefully in July, we are planning to have another Scarif Con 2020. And we're going to make an announcement on Tuesday. It involves bringing... I guess we'll announce it on Tuesday. We'll leave it at that. But Scarif Con 2020, someone's coming to Chicago, and we're gonna have a blast, and it's gonna be great.
Darth Maul.
Scarif Con 2020. That'd be cool if it was Darth Maul. It's not.
It wouldn't be fun. He's one of those people that would not be fun in person.
He'd kick
That's
us
not
out.
judgmental. Jeez.
Awesome. Thank you very much for everybody that's in the chat. Our partners, some of our partners, partner podcasts. Say that 10 times fast. Folks like Pizza and Parsecs, Matt Vader from the Salty Nerd Podcast, Charlie Skywalker, some of the other folks that are in there. Thank you so much. If you guys want to learn a little bit more about the Red 5 Network and what we are all about, head on over to Red 5, the number 5, network.com for more information and a lot more Star Wars geekery.
Awesome.
Brad, again, it was a pleasure for you to see me.
Always.
And until next time, we'll see you guys out there on the interwebs. Marisha, Andrew, thank you again for staying up late, and I'm sure your children are running around hungry somewhere. So, oh, good, excellent, excellent. Again, thank you everybody for joining us, and until next time, what do we say, Brad?
Well, it may be raining all over here in this country, but it's always sunny on Scarif, and that's
the scuttlebutt. Thank you, everybody. Woohoo!